Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Greg Chu with us, creator of Gajumaru and the Internet of Economics, leading the economic emancipation of humanity. These are big words we'll discuss about today. He's the founder of QPQ AG, and used to be in Switzerland. I was in Ireland, founded a bunch of other companies, including Da Vinci Protocol Labs, a vlogger as well. Interesting guy with distinct philosophy altogether. This podcast is brought to you by podpair.com. We can get you on 10 podcasts in the span of 2 months. If you want to generate leads, authority, spot podcasts that are specific to your niche, you can go to podpair.com to learn more about this. Greg, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I've been doing what I call trying to break through to the economic emancipation of humanity since 2002. The last couple of years really had a breakthrough of how we can build an actual blockchain that actually works. And that may sound a bit odd to you, but the reality is that most of what we see in the blockchain space simply isn't. It's a fake. They have control functions that mean that it's not actually what you think it is. And fundamentally, that's the objective. You know, everything in our current economic picture is fragmented infrastructure. It's things that everything is controlled, and the people who make most of the money are the ones who control access to and between those fragments. And the reason for that is we have no resource layer. We have no economic resource layer. Everything is infrastructure, whether it's the US dollar or the payment systems, however you want to look at it, it's all controlled. Which effectively means you need to get permission from somebody else to do business, permission from someone else to participate in the economy. That's something that we reject as an idea. We wanted to restore the capacity for everybody to own their own data, to own their own money, and own their own assets. The starting point for that is to build an actual blockchain that actually works. So to do that, we basically took the same ideas that Satoshi Nakamoto laid out with the Bitcoin white paper, and we made that into something that was tens of thousands of times more efficient. So you end up with an actual blockchain that actually works, minting real money that really works. There's a lot of loaded phrases in those two statements. Happy to dive into them, but that's fundamentally what we're trying to get toward.
Right. The data stuff and the banks and all, I get that crypto wants to take over that. I think it's old money, it's gerontocracies, but isn't it working? Aren't we worrying about problems that do not exist? Or is that me from my privileged point of view, a guy that had a bank account since he was 14?
I think that's... Okay, so let's differentiate a few things. Crypto, and this is why you probably have never heard of me before, because I've been no-platformed in every direction by all of the big crypto names, because I repeatedly call them out for all they do is pump and dump. It's number go up. It's when Lambo to the moon, etc. It's fraud. Blockchain is not crypto. Cryptocurrency is not crypto. Proof-of-stake chains, anything where you see tokens being magically created, or as I put it, by Dorothy clicking her heels together 3 times and saying, I do want to have lots of money, I do want to have lots of money, and I do want to have lots of money, and magically they create tokens and they take money in exchange because your filthy, horrible dollars are nowhere near as good as my shiny little token that might go up exponentially in price and allow some insiders to profiteer and a few lucky external buyers to profit. Look, it's like a casino. Casinos thrive on some people saying that they made some money, but the vast majority of people lose money because that's the nature of it. I refer to crypto as gambling. I think it should be regulated as such. The end, and leave it at that. In terms of the idea that banking works, it does work for the people who already control everything in the first place. What happened in 2008, global financial crisis, they printed money to move out of the problem. What they were really doing was selling everybody else's labor, future labor, for a fraction of its value. Because if you think of it like this, inflation is not consumer price index and producer price index. It's literally monetary inflation. You create more money and therefore something has to change. So what changes? Real assets like property, land, shares in companies that are making a profit, etc. They don't go down in value; they go up in price to match the increased amount of money in the system. And that's not a small multiple, by the way. The amount of money that's been injected into the system through the process of monetary inflation is about 8 to 10 times what we had in 2002 when I was a trader. That catches up eventually into the system, but the transmission fluid to slow monetary inflation translating into consumer price index and producer price index, which is the indexes for inflation that you hear about in the media all the time. The transmission fluid for that is us. It's human beings. It's all the people out there who don't have real assets, don't own property, don't own company shares, who effectively what they have is human capital, their labor. And we're compressing the value of that all the time. So what we've ended up with is anybody under the age of 40, and obviously this is a sweeping generalization, but it's a truism to say that most people under 40 will struggle to ever own a home. That's
Do you need to own a home though? Isn't that, yeah, I'm renting and I'm perfectly fine with that. I think real estate is like an old game. I play SaaS game and cash flow. I want to be mobile as well, somewhat with.
Sure, if that's what works for you. But what about somebody who wants to raise a family, who wants to root themselves in a community
as well? So
the reality is that the argument that's made by the totalitarian state is you will own nothing and be happy. The reality is you will own nothing and be chronically oppressed. This is slavery. It's enslavement. You create a state where people are completely dependent upon the next paycheck and every single paycheck thereafter. They've got no ability to save for the future. They've got no ability to participate in the economy in a wider sense, and you end up with slaves. And this is what we're seeing. It's to me, it's morally abhorrent that we have reduced the value of people's labor in this way. I think people should be able to engage directly in the economy, and it's not just that money printing is a tax; it is an enormous tax on our productivity. But more fundamentally, when you start to create bridgeways in between infrastructure, you naturally create rent-seeking trolls, and those rent-seeking trolls get to take outsized profits for what they do. And you have to ask the question, why? Why do people who own those control points, which in a true blockchain sense become no longer necessary, why allow them to continue to profiteer from that, which effectively taxes everybody else's commercial efficacy? More fundamentally, as I said at the start, where we are right now, you basically have to get permission to run a business. You have to get permission to sell your labor. You have to get permission to do anything and everything. That's wrong. What we should instead have is a state where you can do these things by yourself if you wish to. You can do them any which way you please, because ultimately it's your life, it's your labor that you're selling.
Yeah. Permission, I mean, I think the world has never been better and it's easier as ever to start a startup. We're definitely not under slavery conditions right now, but analogies can be made for sure. I would call it the rat race most specifically, and I don't think the cause is necessarily like big bad bankers, but it's mostly humans and human nature just being comfortable with a comfortable salary, a 9 to 5 at a nice little job, and going back and forth to work. It's like the routine. And then where banks could be bad, right? I mean, they literally invent money out of thin air to loan people up, and they don't have us read the fine prints. They're not transparent. So that I'm definitely opposed against. And I think blockchain and potentially even crypto and Web3 can create a better product, a better user experience here that is more fair, quote unquote.
Look, I'm always careful of criticizing banks as a broad sweep, because the reality is actually they do a lot of things that we need them to do. We talk about trust signals in marketplaces. Well, your local bank is a great trust signal. If you want to talk about decentralized finance, how do I know, as a person sitting here in Ireland temporarily, normally living in Switzerland, and let's say you're in, I don't know, you're
Mexico?
No, you're in Mexico, right? How do I know that you're a good debt, that the property that you intend to purchase is actually there and it's in good condition and all of these things? And I can look at various reports and so on, but those can all be fabricated. A real value signal would be if your local bank were to take the first 1% of that mortgage. And then I could see, oh, actually, somebody who knows Charles, knows the property, lives in that community, thinks it's a good idea. So I think it is too. That's a trust signal. So all through the market, we have trust signals. The thing about banking is people are very quick to talk about bad bankers. Actually, most people who work in banking are very good people, and they work really hard to do a good job against the system. The problem is not about individuals necessarily. I think, as you point out, there's a degree of human nature in this, but some of that human nature is quite malevolent in some ways, that it's trying to constantly. Okay, so for example, I had issues with Jeff Bezos being on the presidential inauguration for Trump because nobody profiteered more from the lockdowns than he did. And what did it achieve? He shut down hundreds of thousands, or not he, COVID blockages, shut down hundreds of thousands of small family businesses around the world who were then replaced by Amazon and the like, delivering services. And as I point out, what was really achieved? Did Jeff Bezos get to add 10 feet to his 180-foot yacht? Bravo. It's not that, that makes me sound like a socialist. I'm not. I'm an actual capitalist. And capitalism is not I win, you lose. That's corporatism. And corporatism only exists by corrupting the entire political process. So
I think, and I'm like you, I'm a capitalist, but I dislike Elon nowadays. I've always disliked Trump. I think he's the most hypocritical human being, but let's not go down that road. Jeff B, yeah, sure. I think the job loss, but I'm against unions. Also, I think unions are not scalable. I think the discussion should happen. I think Jeff B is like really obsessed with his customer, about delivering that box to that door, and I think he had humongous value just doing that. And
really, so if
yes.
you go to Amazon and you enter, let's say you want a a specific manufacturer's jacket, a specific type of jacket, type in that exact thing, and the first 20 search results will all be Chinese companies that have offered to pay Amazon much more for that result. That's not serving the customer.
Yeah, I'll start with a Google search if I want a specific jacket, but Amazon, it's like the quickness of it, right? It's very cheap as well to get stuff on Amazon. The bad thing about it is that you get addicted to it. You get like consumerism stuff, and you start adding shit to your cart that you don't even need, stuff that you don't even use. It's like dust accumulation in that house,
Yeah,
but.
okay.
It's. I think he's done great. The bad thing is the environment. I think it's disgusting for the environment. Like the footprint of Amazon is pretty ridiculous. But what I like about Jeff B is that he's been adopted, right? Like, and he got from 0 to 1 pretty quickly, and that's quite inspiring for a new generation. And so is Elon, but I think Elon's. He's moving a lot of shit nowadays and creating lots of controversy.
I think, look, Elon Musk has many motivations for the things he does. Not all of them are the ones he says they are, I don't believe. I mean, for example, why does he want to go to Mars? I don't think it's just so he can deploy money in a different way. I think it's so he can figure out how to catch an asteroid, mine it, and bring the materials back to Earth, which is
or just create a new society, a new country with full sovereignty.
Well, look, as it stands, we have no sovereignty as it is. I mean,
well, on Mars, I think you would. I think he could have like his own systems, yes, with AI, satellites, protections, and
AI and sovereignty are completely opposed to one another. So AI, large language models, if we use the correct term, they are simply things that have stolen all of our data, all of our IP, and are then repackaging them and selling them back to us. In a world in which we actually own our data, most of those large language models would be defunct unless they paid you to receive your information. And you should only give them information using a zero knowledge proof, which is one of the many things that we've patented and will be licensing into the Gajimara for free. because we believe that you should own your data, not other people.
But that's what you believe, right? Like me, I believe that AI is adding humongous value to all of us. You
For
can,
whom?
for myself, it's humongous.
For
It's
you.
crazy. Yeah,
For
and
a
for
very
most
small number
users,
of the population who it's going to make richer, because it allows you to scale your ability to take money from other people and to take their data. If we restore to a state where people own their own data, you would have to pay to utilize and access their data, which would be a fairer system, I would argue.
you have a point. But I think ChatGPT is available to like anyone owning a smartphone, and it's free, and so are like many other models. I'm sort of against patents because I think it restricts our progress as a humanity. You know, like
No, but
most people don't do anything with
patents are
patents, with
misused.
copyrights,
Look,
with
agreed.
data.
Patents are grossly abused and misused, and actually the entire intellectual property industry is one that exists for its own betterment, not for that of its customers. The reason we patented everything was extraordinarily simple. If we don't, somebody else patents it and stops you from doing it. So we patent it, and then we license it for free into the chain itself. It's all under GPL3 open source licensing. So it's we're not playing that game. We're aware of how that game is played, and we're playing back to it, but we're not joining in.
I'm curious about the model you mentioned though, because I could picture that as somewhat scalable, right? Getting paid for the quality data that you added to an algorithm that's being reused. Because yeah, arguably, OpenAI is taking like the core of the value right now. How would that look like? How would I get paid as a creator, someone that adds value on a daily basis and gets his data and content scraped by an AI?
Yeah, look, I think if you start thinking about how blockchain could actually work, I mean, look, this is a really simplistic point. No blockchain out there really works. No, it doesn't. It hasn't done so since day one, because the reality is, if you built an actual blockchain that actually worked, minting real money that really works, 10 years ago, the first thing you'd build is a marketplace. We built one. There's a walkthrough on YouTube of us showing you how it works. And one of the things we do in that is we remove logins and passwords. We run the whole thing out of the secure enclave of your device. So when you start thinking about what a blockchain could actually do, you could start to meta tag every piece of content. That content then becomes something that you own, and it has copyright attaching to it, which then means that if a large language model wants to utilize your content, that it has to pay you to do so, which again is something that real money with many subdivisions of a penny in terms of utilization can actually pay you hundredths of a cent, thousandths of a cent for each piece that it uses from you, and in that way begin to compensate this whole thing. Now, does that change the model? Yes, it does, because you go away from this current system where large tech companies own all of your data, and you basically pay them for the services that they then render back to you using your data.
And the company that's doing that the best right now, you've probably heard of them, Outlier.ai. How would your model be different from them? Because they're literally hiring freelancers, quote unquote experts. Most of them are students, ironically, to better prompt an AI and tell the AI, hey, here's where you're wrong. And the company behind that, you've probably heard Scale AI by Alex Wang. They harvest that to make a better algorithm. I personally think that company is like the epitome of human slavery, and I think it's very dystopian. It's like harvesting human data for an AI that eventually won't need them. And I'm saying that because Alex claims that he's creating a bunch of jobs, but I think it's pretty much the opposite. What do you think about them, and how is your model different, and where does the blockchain kick in yours?
Okay, one, how do we differ from them? In every way you can possibly imagine, we differ from them. They are exactly as you pointed out. They are about reducing us to the bare minimum and turning us into a source of money with the least possible power or capacity to monetize our own individual humanity and capacity and creative abilities. My approach, and this is not something that I'm saying that we are telling people that we offer as a service. This is something that everyone can do. If you have an actual blockchain that's completely open, as ours is, that you can do anything you want with, then what's stopping you? What's stopping you doing this for yourself? And that ultimately is what we want to try and get people to understand, is that, and this is the difficulty with any of these kind of things in reality, is that you're saying to people, you can be free, but being free comes with the cost of being responsible for yourself. And that can be a harder sell. However, that's fundamentally what we're trying to do, is give people that choice. So technically, you could meta tag your own content. You could put it on the chain. You could create a smart contract that automates the process by which it engages with a counterparty who wishes to use some of your content, whether that's a clip or the whole thing, or repurpose it in some way. And you automate the process of negotiation between those two things.
Do you feel that blockchain is essential for ethical AGI?
I think blockchain is essential to protect our freedoms against large language models and the current obsession with big tech companies owning everything about us and then selling it back to us and reducing us to slaves. Yes. So blockchain and AI don't belong in the same conversation. They are directly opposed to one another. And our protection against the tech machine is freedom. It is to be given back our economic sovereignty as people. And that's what a blockchain, that's what Satoshi set out to achieve. Whether people like this or not, Bitcoin is not an answer. It was a proof of concept for how to create real money in a new way. Real money historically, and this is Satoshi's real breakthrough, was he understood that gold historically had only ever been mined to be money. It had never been mined for an industrial process prior to World War II, really. It was mined for money. So his breakthrough was to say, well, look, why do you what does having gold do? It gives you a fungible thing that you can prove is real, that came from a limited resource that you had to take risk and work in order to extract. That's the same thing, in his opinion, and he was right, I believe, as solving a cryptographic puzzle. You have to take risk, you have to do work. It's a proof of work chain, and that's exactly what we've built, a proof of work chain, because proof of stake is not at all a resource layer. It's infrastructure. It's always infrastructure. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But if you look at that breakthrough in of itself, it allows us to return to a state where we have real money that's ours. Nobody else controls it. It's in your wallet. It's yours. The end. Now, if you choose to give it to a third party who then provides you with some sort of service back, as we do with banks today, that's your business, but that's your freedom. Today, you don't have that choice, and that's what we want to restore, is choice. Coming back to that proof of stake versus proof of work thing, I'm being simplistic, but essentially, when you have proof of stake, it works when you know who all the actors in the system are, and you can in some way, shape, or form trust them, or you are forced to trust them. In anonymous proof of stake, it's a little bit like working for a company where you don't know who anybody is above your own level. You don't know who the managers are, you don't know who the directors are, and you don't know who the owners are. That's what anonymous proof of stake boils down to. It is an invitation for collusion by those who have the majority of the stake, and they can do so without you knowing who they are or what they're doing. In a proof of work system, it's completely fair, transparent. You don't know who's going to win the next puzzle solution. That's where we feel that we really departed from the story, was that instead of solving why Bitcoin was so inefficient, we instead focused on how, per the crypto argument, we could defraud the maximum number of people at scale in order to put ourselves into a Lambo. That's why I despise that industry. It's why I think they've done everything they possibly could to destroy what the vision of Satoshi was all about. And that's why I say that our object is the economic emancipation of humanity. It's not something that we can force people to do, obviously, but for the first time ever, we can give them a choice. Do you want to profit from your own labor, or do you want to give somebody else the ability to tax your labor? That's your choice, but now you have a choice.
Okay, couple of rapid fire to finish this off because we're already on time. Do you think Satoshi will be more important than Jesus over time, over decades, centuries?
No.
No, okay. Do you think that WorldCoin, Sam Altman's WorldCoin, is on a better track to, and UBI, do you think it's on a better track to fulfill human financial emancipation?
No, that's all about controlling humanity.
Okay. Last question. You commented on my LinkedIn the other day that you found it pathetic humans that find fulfillment in AI. Any comments on that?
Yeah, fulfillment is not about dealing with a bot. It's about sitting and talking to other people. It's about connecting with people. It's about going out and going fishing with somebody and not having to say a word the entire time. I mean, look, ultimate guy thing is you go out for the day with a friend and you utter 2 words in the entire day. That's it. But it's the companionship. it's the connection with somebody. You know, as I say about my wife, one of the greatest things about my wife is I can sit with her and say nothing, and it's nice.
Yeah, I
I
respect
think
that.
human connection is so important, and it's something we've done a lot to undermine in the last 30, 40 years. We need to get back to it. I think everybody would be mentally and physically so much healthier if we could get back to that point where we actually connect with one another. My favorite memories growing up were all with other people. Bar school in London, I spent the entire thing in the City of York pub. There was a snug in the side. There were about 15 or 20 of us piling out of the thing. There were no TVs. There was no music, nothing. It was just a bunch of people talking and having fun and taking the piss out of each other. It was wonderful. That's what it is to be human. And I think so much of what we see at the moment is destroying our humanity. We need to restore our humanity. We need to restore the individual to give them back choices. And if we restore the individual, we can start to talk about restoring the community. If you fix communities, you fix societies, you fix societies, you fix countries, you fix the world. So bottom up, not top down.
Right. That was Greg Chu and Charles Cormier for